theme has entered, and Jupiter changing signs, I can contest for the last like 6 to 8 years. I'm sorry. Yeah, about like 8 years, it completely changes the film work of like what is happening in your life and what is like the theme. It's almost like the genre of movie, so to speak. So as being the great benefic Jupiter, it's also to embody the next doorway, the next adventure, the next kind of enhanced wisdom that you're going to experience within this planetive. And now we've just came into Aries, cardinal fire, and the beginning of the zodiacal calendar. So honestly, it's pretty exciting on the things that can show up for us. So we're going to drop into that.
Awesome. Yeah. And just a quick recap. What does Jupiter do for us? So Jupiter and Saturn are the two kind of societal planets that structure basically how we move forward as a culture, as people, as a collective. And Jupiter is one of the planets that Ricky said is associated with wisdom. And so generally whatever sign Jupiter is in is going to help us expand the wisdom associated with that sign's themes, which we're going to get into in this video. Jupiter is also a lot about growth and expansion. So challenging yourself in new ways, doing things that you haven't done before, according to that sign's themes again. And what else do you want to say about Jupiter?
I definitely want to emphasize for Jupiter, and is my ruling planet. But to remind what Jupiter does for us is Jupiter and Saturn are the huge structures that expand our lives and contract our lives. And Jupiter, being the great benefic, is also extremely, extremely positive. So it definitely wants to increase things. You're always gaining something with Jupiter. Sometimes it could be good or bad with that, but like at most times, Jupiter's usually extremely positive. It's also a sense of optimism. So it's usually allowing to embrace and engage faith, to even people that don't have a lot of faith, you could argue, to opening up to a new horizon. And usually good luck comes from that. We can say that good fortune comes with Jupiter because now faith has enabled us to see a perspective beyond what there is. I also want to say it also embodies creation. You know, this big gravity of Jupiter really wants to allow us to create and open and engage new things forward. It also is a planet of generosity and giving and parenting. You know, we can also say that gurus, Jupiter is the big guru in even Hindu scripture, but it's also like where teachings and parental advice or however things are coming across. Jupiter is also expanding your consciousness. It's the higher mind, so to speak. So it can even rule like universities. But in this case, I would argue that Jupiter is more about like kind of philosophical understanding about life. Like you have to go experience the journey to then engage with that wisdom that Jupiter is here to increase and kind of engage that storybook in life. If you did anything in life, you need a key to open it. So if you were being a doctor, a pilot, a submarine person, you know, there's going to be a whole journey that is going to be involved within that realm of experiencing it. And that's what Jupiter's here to unlock for us.
Absolutely. So one of the key themes is essentially learning and growth around a certain topic. And that could be through experiences, challenges, anything that really brings that to life. And so Jupiter in Aries is specifically going to help you learn to unlock the energy of Aries. But before we jump into more detail about what that is, let's kind of give context as to why this is happening now.
Let's bring it on
Taking it back. So look back at COVID and we can see essentially this was a time of, you know, all these kind of restrictions happening in society, people having a lot of devastation around them. And then right after that, we have Jupiter in Pisces. So this time where we are meant to heal, to surrender. This is a time of almost inaction, not in the sense that we're not meant to go out into the world and do stuff, but that we have to process a lot of what was happening. So Jupiter as this planet that is in charge of our societal progress, it's having us take a stop and rest and reflect on what in the world just happened to us. So it has been in Pisces this year. And
since December 29th, 2021.
December 29th, 2021. And it just moved into Aries. What day did it move?
It was
into
May
Aries?
11th.
May 11th.
So we're going to jump into that. That was crazy. Yep.
So it moved into Aries May 11th. It's going to stay in Aries until October 28th of this year. Then it's going to retrograde back into Pisces for a few months. And then on Ricky's birthday, December 20th, it will enter Aries again. And so
pretty exciting.
That's kind of how Jupiter works. It remains in a sign for 1 year, but generally it's going to have that retrograde pattern where it returns the previous sign for a few months to kind of wrap up anything that was left unsaid or undone in that area of your life and then come forward again. And so I think that this Pisces time was a time of letting go and surrendering. And now we are being initiated to do the opposite, to take action, to create our reality, which we're going to talk about now.
So I do want to emphasize that sometimes if you can look at Jupiter, it's like taking a journey. And each sign is going to have a different journey. So we definitely had last year of Jupiter in Aquarius, where it was for most of 2021, and right at that pinnacle of December 29th, it comes into Pisces. So it's kind of funny. It ran right through Pisces. It actually is quite fast. It's not even halfway in the year, and it went through the whole sign, you know? But ironically, the gifts that were kind of unfolded within this period of 2022, Jupiter is dignified ruler in Pisces. And so just a quick little context is that we got a lot of expansion, but it's also in a place where not all has been fully revealed yet. And so since it's just journeyed through Pisces and is going to stop at 8 degrees Aries and then retrograde, this is where we're going to come to terms of where the end of that journey will be for 2022. So there's a lot of integrating that's going to happen from this year. It's almost like we're going to get a lot of leeway. And ironically, it's the year of the Chinese water tiger, and tiger years is supposedly like huge jumps that we also need to kind of go reflect on after we make that big jump. It's like big confident boosts, and then it's also kind of like, well, let's reorganize that back again, where we're going to go back into Pisces and have to probably go through some spiritual realms, some real deeper understanding, get a little bit more kind of juice from source to figure out what can really be aspected, and we're going to have a lot of fun jumping in that with you guys right now. So
yeah, and I wanted to touch on that because this is something that I've been seeing kind of happen around me in my personal life. Is this, so basically what Ricky is kind of illustrating I've been seeing in my personal life is this, when Jupiter moves into Aries, I feel like there is this really, how do I put this? I feel like we are jumping headfirst into things in many ways, you know, like I'm going to do what's best for me. I'm going to like go after this and this way. And I feel like when it moves back into Pisces is a time when we will understand how to embody the Jupiter and Aries energy without it maybe being so intense. Like me first, like I'm going to do this and this, you know what I mean? Like it's like this, I think people often will overcorrect when they're first like trying something out. Like, oh, I haven't been doing this thing in my life for a while, so now I'm going to go 110% into it. And it's like, well, that's actually not healthy either. You know, can we have a healthy embodiment of being independent and self-focused without being selfish or without ruining relationships or without, you know, overdoing certain things? And so I think that it's a blessing to have Jupiter retrograde back into Pisces to give us the opportunity to reconnect with what's best for the collective and see from a higher perspective how maybe we can overdo sometimes this energy of Jupiter and Aries, which again, we're about to describe in more detail.
Well, yeah, no, I totally get that. One thing in this situation, what I believe Source is doing is I do agree with Courtney that it's, you know, we're just going 110%. But one thing that Jupiter is going to do with Aries is we're also kind of playing catch up, because when it is in Pisces, which is a great placement, it also though can get us a little bit kind of like extra paradise, like, yeah, I don't want to worry about anything. Everything's wonderful, you know, and it's beautiful. I really do. But with Neptune being there, which we've talked about in a previous video, you know, we can get a little bit what you would call it, you know, you can get a little day drunk. I don't know what another way to put it, honestly is much more kind of like just kind of letting things pass you by. And so Jupiter, though, being in an essence where it's now in a fire placement in cardinal fire, one of the most masculine positions, it is kind of setting a little fire in our butt and kind of pushing us to re-engage with who we are. And it only goes up to 8 degrees, so we're getting enough of a really good Aries spark. But I do find that along this journey, we're going to go back to source into the Pisces realm to rediscover and uncover unconscious parts of ourselves that once integrated will give this Aries Jupiter so much more oomph than in the next coming year. So
yes.
I just want to emphasize that. I know it sounds like common knowledge, but I think we could break down Aries a little bit for people contextually. That Aries is the first sign of the zodiac. It's cardinal fire. It represents strength, masculinity, inceptivity. Basically, it initiates things. It starts things. I mean, I don't want to get too crude there, but basically, like, the masculine energy, that it begins starting something in that way. Independence, individuality, and a sense of freedom. So, this is really about the self-identity, the I am, that Jupiter is now coming back to unfold. And I really think this is an important time to redesign, re-understand, reignite, also with Chiron being in Aries, who we know ourselves to be. This is coming in a full form identity of who we want to be and who are we. And that can take on a couple different approaches. Did you want to say something on that? Or?
Yeah, so I actually have a quote for this specific energy. I don't know. It's by the Aeneid. or it's in the Aeneid. It's by the Roman poet Virgil.
Oh.
Anyway, no one really cares, but it's something in Latin, and it basically says, fortune favors the bold. And I feel like this is very much the Jupiter in Aries energy, because Aries is, like you said, the
bold
inception of something, but it's doing so from a place of tenacity and courage and inventiveness and bravery, boldness, and it's you're starting something for the first time. You're pioneering something. You're doing something you've never done before, and that is also part of the reason why it's associated with the identity, because you know what happens when you try something for the first time. You can really start to see or feel if it meshes with your identity, if it vibrates with your, likes or dislikes, and it resonates with you essentially. And then it can become part of your identity. It's like you explore and discover things about yourself. And so this could be a really, really beautiful time to discover new parts of yourself that you haven't discovered before, especially wherever in your birth chart you have Aries, is where you can see some of those elements of your life start to flourish and grow in new and different ways.
I love that. I love that so much. Fortune favors the bold. That could not be more themed around Jupiter in Aries for this time. And to really drop in with that is this invites people to really be bold with who they are. And Jupiter is going to exacerbate and enhance that initiating spirit to jump in and be bold and not really care about the agenda of other people. This is a healthy form of being selfish. That word seems to get really like, it's really it's like a dirty word in society, because we have these belief structures around being selfish is bad. But you know that when you go into the airplane, it's put on your gas mask first and then help your neighbor.
Oxygen mask.
No, oxygen mask, excuse me. Oxygen.
Or you can just whip your gas mask out that you bring with you on the plane.
Yeah. So, but it's definitely to initiate. Honestly, when I think of the 0 degree Aries, which is the first degree in the whole zodiac, I think of birth. Because it's that intense moment of like, push, and there's a face. And the face, and as crude as that might be, is that the face is now the identity that is showing out to the world. And Aries is ruled by the face and the blood. So it's really about like, who are you showing up in a sense of your autonomous identity? This isn't Libra. This isn't about really being with other people. This is actually taking initiative for yourself. And just as the element of fire would entail, you were just saying something like doing an activity. Well, everyone origined by starting something very new in the moment of that combustion. So I could say like, one day I just wanted to play piano and just diddling around. where is that moment where you've hit enough momentum and you've enjoyed such of that process that now that little spark has turned into a full like illuminating light that you identify with? And I think that's something that you can experiment to see how much that comes into your identity with Jupiter and Aries, because it's very much lighting the match. And you can feel like, oh, I know who I am. I put everything on the table, no matter how old you are. I think it was a 65-year-old woman, give or take some years, pardon me, that she just initiated and started becoming a gold medalist Olympian later in her life. So there's never a time you can argue it's too late or too soon or whatever the circumstance. We live in a world that is so ignitively abundant that you can really become and be anything. And to just add this one little detail, the glyph of Aries, literally you could argue is the ram, but I just see it's just push through. It's just straightforward, go in that direction. And if anyone that I've noticed, especially Aries men or Aries energy, they are as dignified. When I identify who I am, I'm taking up this zone, and there's nothing really you can say or do about it. Now, I don't think we need to how do I say this? Like personify that against or into society. But if you say you're an actor, who's going to tell you you're not? And especially if you do the motions and be the way that is, you just are. And some of the greatest people ever probably were naysayed that you'll never be able to be that person. And just by the act of that combustion, the continuous showing up into that area, they become that identity by law.
And I think the important thing here is the follow through, because Aries is a sign of initiation of birth. And it doesn't necessarily imply that there's consistency and follow through. But with the North Node in Taurus, this balance here is saying, let's do the things that you said you were always going to do, or let's try something new that you've never tried before because you've been stuck. So one of those things, maybe you've been stuck in the same pattern and there's something that you know in the back of your head that you keep putting off for tomorrow or for Monday, do that thing. Or maybe you keep trying the same approach again and again, and you keep getting results that you're not happy with. Trying something that really pushes you outside of your comfort zone. But then again, with the North Node in Taurus, it's saying stick with it long enough to see if it's meant for you. Like, you sitting down and playing the piano once isn't going to really necessarily show you, this is my new hobby, this is my identity, this is for me. Like, maybe, but oftentimes you have to get, there are some things that click right away, but sometimes there are things that you have to develop a certain amount of skill for it to be really fun.
I want to fully support you. Is like Aries energy has the drive to initiate things, but just it could be a slow burn, and then you light that piece of paper and then it's gone. So you can't really fully identify with it unless you've given it the dedication, value, and you value it enough, North Node Taurus, to make it part of your identity, to keep feeding that. You know, you got it. Yeah, every practice you kind of get feeding the flame of identifying with it. If it is a relationship or a skill or a business, you got to kind of keep feeding that for it to be part of your reality. So it's good to initiate things, but again, North Node and Taurus is also supporting this. Like, hey, let's embody the identity of things we really value, and let's own our value by truly identifying with it. So,
yes, yeah, absolutely. And I think the other thing to add to that is that Aries is a Mars ruled sign. And Mars is specifically associated with cutting things away. When you have like a Mars ruled perfection year, which I'm not going to get into details about, but when you have that, there's typically quite a bit of endings. You're severing what once was in your life that was unnecessary. Kind of like with a tree or plant, how you want to cut off the dead limbs because it will just keep giving energy to that, and you won't have enough energy to grow the tree or the plant.
Pruning.
Thank you. There is one word to describe the whole sentence I just said. Well, that's why Ricky's here. But
it was articulated great.
Just in case there's some bilingual speakers who don't know the word prune, that's why I did it, guys. No, but really the pruning is essentially making way for there to be enough energy to dedicate to these new pathways that we're trying to do. So Aries is not just about starting new, it's about ending old. And so if there are things that you feel like, oh my gosh, like this is actually getting in my way of my higher self, of my success, of my ability to own a new identity that I want to embody, which you're talking about. If something is getting in the way of that, this year is also very much about cutting that thing out.
One thing to note is Mars is the ruler of Aries, and it was in Aries and is, as we make this video, while Jupiter entered Aries. So there's a lot of distinctions, a lot of deep cuts you're only going to get from this kind of video on what this Jupiter is actually really trying to do. So just to kind of what Courtney's saying, Mars is the only planet, and this is a little bit of a deep cut, but is the only planet that can actually scrape away karma. But when Jupiter is coming up right behind it, this is also about reigniting and initiating the things that we want. So to be real, it is a time of being selfish to an extent, not to go haywire, but to be in alignment with, you know what, I'm tired of not putting myself first. And I'm really here to like actually jump into what it is that I identify with and let that breathe room and take space. And again, like, you know, if we're using the tree as an analogy for like plants or parts that are not growing, we have to prune that part for said tree to grow in the way that we want, for identity to actually come into alignment and whatever, like to come into alignment for exactly how we want to be identified with. This doesn't mean that the things will have to shift. And there's a little bit of where we were in the Pisces zone of things, a little bit just going with the ebb and flow. And then Aries is a little bit really hard yeses and really hard nos. And so the thing is, it is such a passionate position. This can give you a lot of extra physical energy, and I can almost entail will challenge you. It is to challenge you to be your best and to show you a little bit of what it is that a little bit do you got what it takes to own into that identity. Because I won't lie, Mars, and especially Aries, is a malefic kind of sign and is a malefic area of life where there is some struggle, where there's some resistance, where there is something we need to pave our way, blaze a trail to really who we are. And when someone knows something deep within themselves, Jupiter and Aries, it's about emitting that into the world and owning it. So a lot of areas where people could be coaches, a lot of areas where like people might be, it's a motivating factor that your ego, by enhancing your ego, you're actually able to give more abundance and charity around your environment, as the principle of Jupiter would be. So this is actually quite the psychology of actually give more to yourself so you can give more to others is truly what's going on here.
And this time is fruitful for being self-focused. And I like that word better than selfish because of the connotations with selfish, but
right, I agree.
I also like using selfish just so we can redefine it. But self-focus, I think, is less triggering if you have issues around selfishness. And this is our time for self-focus. And this actually reminds me of last time Jupiter was in Aries, which the event came up in my head first. And I looked back at my phone and I was like, oh, that's actually the timing of last time Jupiter was in Aries. And that's why I'm thinking about it, which was back in 2010. So this is actually when I graduated and I went off to study abroad. And I went entirely by myself. I went to Spain. I had way too much luggage with me, but I was alone in a country or a place that I had been in, I think, one time before, but never this city. I didn't know a soul. I knew the language, but also, had a lot to learn. And it was very much like being thrown into the fire. Like, okay, here's this brand new place. You are living here now. You have to figure out how it operates, how to communicate, make new friends, find your place in this world, take these classes. So it was the most kind of risky, independent experience I've had. And it wasn't just like, oh, I'm going for a couple of months. Like it was an entire year of my life where I was like, I am committing to this and I will make this work. And it was something that I also felt really passionate about, had the fire burning within me, but was also intimidating, but exciting. And I think that is exactly what Jupiter in Aries is about. And I had to leave behind my friends and my family and my home and everything I knew for that experience. But then after that year, which is like, makes sense, Jupiter's in Aries for a year. After that year, that experience became so much a part of my identity that I actually end up going back to Spain and living there again and traveling to so many countries. And it's now become kind of part of my identity, like I said, to be a traveler, to love cultures and all these things. And so this year is when you will discover these parts of yourself that you've never seen before, and then they will grow and multiply in the years to come. So the necessary losses or the necessary separations or choosing yourself and not, sticking with what's familiar, not sticking with the people that you already know or the places that you already know, and going out on your own, those are going to provide the most benefits this year, because those people will still be there next year when Jupiter moves into Taurus and you ground again. Mm-hmm. But right now, this is your time to go out there and take that risk so you can discover this part of yourself that's waiting for you.
I would totally agree with that. I think there's so much benefit of being with yourself and getting to really know your character. And you might feel, I already know who I am, but truth be told, in such a changing world and all the transits that have changed so much, to add one extra detail, this is the last year we're going to have Pluto in Capricorn while we're dealing with an Aries position of identity. You have not reached as high as you can go for who you might know who you are. The truth is, there's a bit of that aspect for Jupiter and Aries to push you forward to keep going. And honestly, this is a time that, again, you might revolutionize who you know yourself to be and your identity once you've ignited and found who it is that you find you truly are. So this is very self-aware. It's time to be most self-aware. And it's funny, not to pick on Libras at all, to give a lot of love to Libras. It's funny because this is in your relationship house where Libras might need to start defining what they want and get away from the other people's agenda. And I'm only using that example just from that sign because it's a lot about, hey, this is a time to be self-focused and really reignite. It's not about pleasing other people right now. This is about giving yourself what you want right now. And with Pluto finishing in Capricorn, this is also to rise up to an area where this is the last year in our lives is gone, is over in Earth. We're not going to see Pluto in Earth for I don't even know, a long, 40 years, 50 years? I got to do the math on that one, but it'll be so far away from now that it's really time to rise up. What's the tallest mountain peak that you can rise for yourself? Some of that I really just want to leave there because this is the time to call the drive. The horns are blowing, and with Jupiter in Aries, with Mars in Aries, this is about redefining and taking initiative on what it is that you want for yourself. And to be real, with the fire element and the malefic energies of Aries, if you're sitting there not doing anything, unfortunately, you don't get the benefits of what Jupiter's trying to do unless you're at least identifying with it. You could just simply look in the mirror and say, I am blank blank, and nurture and keep stoking the flame on that identifying factor to illuminate who you're going to see yourself as. And to share just one last little note, because Courtney said some cool stuff about her personal. In 2011, I was junior year, and that was most of where Aries was coming out in my chart, and that was probably the most defining times I was involved with musical groups, playing shows, and expressing myself, and my wild and more creative personality was really coming out. I feel like I really wasn't a person till that kind of alignment where most of my energy was really coming out for myself. And then when it came into Leo, I really was ignited with so many benefactors of this alignment. So basically put, I feel like that was really where I started being a new kind of archetype in the world. And even though that was just me as a teenager in high school,
Yeah. And I think going back to the gardening analogy, we mentioned that this Jupiter in Aries is about pruning, but it's also about planting the seeds. And what happens when you plant a new seed is that you do see it kind of break the surface and it's growing, and you get the the idea is there, the energy is there, your first initiation with it is there, but you don't actually see the fruits of that labor or of that experience for years to come. So even though I got all those amazing experiences, it wasn't until years later that I went back to Spain and actually got to enjoy everything that I had spent so much time setting the foundation for and learning. And maybe Ricky was out there working hard on his music, and then he really saw that flourish in the years when Jupiter was in Leo, or the time.
Like you're just identifying with the character, not maybe reaching the whole fruits. Like when it's sprouted, it's there. It's part of it's in the house. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. And so just kind of keep that in mind, is we are planting the seeds for our future selves. So it's not just like, oh, I need to go out and do these things because I said I'm going to be doing them. It's no, who do you want to be 5 years from now? Because if you sit on your butt this year, you're not going to be where you want to be 5 years from now. And I mean, that's always the case, but there is an element always of divine timing. And and with Jupiter and Aries, the timing is right for these new initiations, for these new beginnings, and to take action. So I really love how Ricky started off with identifying as this person, but you have to follow it up at some point with action, because that's what Mars and Aries is all about, is taking the steps forward.
Definitely.
Awesome. Okay, so it could be helpful to look back to 2010, 2011 to see when Jupiter was last in Aries. What was going on in your life? Did you have some new beginnings? Did you take risks? Did you do something that you've never done before? And then that's maybe what you can experience during this time, but in a new way, in a new fashion.
Don't forget, and it's funny, I'm a huge motivational, I have an Aries moon, so I'm huge like let's go out and seize the day, kind of thing. Because honestly, life is out there. And with Jupiter being in this position, I just want to speak on some actors that have this position just real quick. So we got Angelina Jolie, Johnny Depp, Al Pacino, Rihanna, Lauryn Hill, Whitney Houston, Sting, James Hetfield, Chopin, Salvador Dali, Robin Williams, Lionel Messi, Tiger Woods, Gary Cove, I can't say his name, pardon me, Nikola Tesla, Jeff Bezos, and I do believe Brad Pitt too. Yeah, all these energies though, like even Nikola Tesla, if we could just use him for a zone, is just like embodying a certain identity. And I can imagine everyone kind of not giving him that sort of acknowledgement, but like he becomes that said person. It's like an expansion upon his identity, where ironically, he vicariously lives into one of the biggest car manufacturers in the world right now. So it's kind of funny. And since it's a masculine sign, we even have Angelina Jolie. I just see her playing sometimes, even though she's in a feminine energy, and she's Gemini, I believe. Yeah. Angelina Jolie.
I think she's a Gemini.
She's a Gemini, yeah. It's still getting a bit of this kind of like, a little bit of owning your badassery. Like how can I put it? Like Jupiter in Aries is a little bit kind of like that crimson, like kind of energy that grabs life by the horns and defines itself. And so there is a little bit of that edge, a little bit of your archetypical warrior that's within you, that's willing to pay its dues to who it wants to become. And that's where there's a little bit of the malefic energy that's like, hey, there's a little bit of a push. It's not going to be like Jupiter in Pisces, which allows us to I'm just planting the seed.
Whatever you want, hon.
It's going to show up magically with the universe in all its ways. And that's perfectly fine. But there's the moment, that time will come. But this is the time to go. And you don't want to wait, if you are watching this video within June 16th, when Mars leaves Aries and comes into Taurus. This is the biggest oomph. This June is about the biggest oomph before we go into retrograde city, and a lot of things slow down. So.
And yeah, it's a time for that personal challenge that we've been mentioning. Maybe a little bit of bloodshed, whether that's actual bloodshed or just the effort it takes to achieve something that is really difficult. Yeah, blood, sweat, and tears. But also the self-sufficiency is important. And this doesn't necessarily mean that you have to ruin relationships to achieve what you want. But it does sometimes mean that if the collective, if your group of friends, if that person you always rely on to do stuff with doesn't want to do the thing you want to do, you go on your own. You're like, okay, cool. I'll see you guys another time. I'm going to go do this because I want to do this for me. Even if that means that it's uncomfortable because I've never been to a concert alone, but I want to see them and I'm just going to go and buy the ticket for myself. And that's a Jupiter and Aries energy that you are not allowing yourself to be codependent and have that stop you from pursuing things that are important to you. Just because somebody doesn't agree with it or it doesn't align with them or they don't want to do it or whatever it has to do with other people, it's like they're not necessarily a considering factor anymore. Obviously you want to still care about people's feelings, but if you want something, you go for that thing and you find a way to make that work along with your relationships or do it alone.
Definitely want to emphasize on that. Yes, this is definitely the time where like Aries, you got to choose what you want. And it's okay to do the Mars thing and take up some space. This isn't being fully like greedy with the situational energy and just like everything needs to be about you and take over. It's not about that. It's more and more about like if Saturn is an Aquarius and so many other things I want to bring into. So we're trying to keep it on Jupiter and Aries, but to be all the benefactors that are going on right now this is very much about you charting the path on what you want and not getting sucked into all these other energies of things that don't really identify with you. And so there's a level of balance within that, but like you're going to get to understand on when you give yourself so much self-reliance on that identity of who you want to be, that comes by your hand alone. And again, as I reiterated from the beginning of this video, you can give so much more once you've fulfilled in what you identify with. So I can imagine someone, and I'm thinking of an actor because we said a bunch of actors, and maybe their friends are taking them wanting to go drinking or whatever the heck the situation is. They're going to stay home and work on their craft. And that's something because they know who they want to be and they know who they are. And later one day they walk into those shoes, which I'm going to wink, wink when we hit in the Leo season, what's going to be happening in August or late July, just with some other factors. So it's just to realize that this is a time for you to like take the initiative for yourself and know if you're walking alone, this is a time to feel into your power more than ever.
Exactly. So I think Ricky is lying to you. I'm just kidding. He is correct.
I don't lie.
With this quality of empowering yourself. And so Mars is the ruler of Aries. As we mentioned, it is a warrior planet. There is some element of having to fight for what you want. So that's why there is this malefic energy, this challenging energy with this. It's not just blessings. It's like you have to fight for your blessings. You have to put the effort in. You have to challenge yourself. And that's how you become empowered, is you do things that are really hard and you succeed and you become more confident and you can do harder and harder things. And then you feel unstoppable. And so that's really what Jupiter in Aries is about.
Just to add this funny little experience for the viewers is we went on a mountain biking trail and it was the hardest thing ever. And it was just pure Jupiter and Aries. The greatest thing we got from that trail was basically like, man, if I can do that, I can deal with a lot in life.
I didn't go.
Flipped off the good. Thank God. Yeah. Not that we didn't want you there, but just thank God you didn't need to go through that.
Oh gosh. And I think that's maybe not the best example just because like at the end, I don't know. I think Jupiter and Aries, while it can be challenging, can also be really fun. And you're like, you want to do it.
No, it should be engaging, passionate. Let's go. Like slam the gas. If it's something that it should be definitely in the F yes and the F no category. And Aries gets so excited. We kind of want to do everything. But it's making sure like you're willing to consistently go with what you choose to do. I just can tell you that as an Aries moon and a lot of Aries, it represents the inner child. So don't forget that. It's not just all about being a whole warrior all the time, but activating the inner child of what's engaging, what's passionate, what's free and carefree. And those are things that sometimes people fall upon their blessings as a child easily with grace, just out of the fun of it. So I just want to remind that.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point as well. There's a lot of intensity behind Aries that is there, But then also it's like, are you lit up by this? Are you excited about this? Are you passionate about this? And then you bring the intensity to the table to follow through because you're excited about it. I also wanted to mention kind of what I was saying about empowering and having to fight for what you want. This could also be true for things related to rights, especially because Jupiter has a lot to do with justice, the justice system, our rights as humans and as a collective, kind of what we tolerate or don't tolerate. And so Jupiter in Aries might have us have to fight more for our autonomous rights for whatever it is. So for like women, them trying to appeal Roe v. Wade or things like that, like this could become a really predominant issue if we have to fight now for our right to have body autonomy, which is just crazy to me. Or, any other thing that's going on right now, which I'm not super plugged into politics, but this is a topic that can definitely come up in your personal life as well. Like I have to fight for my right to be treated this way in my life, or, really set certain boundaries or really communicate my needs and choose myself regardless if that affects others in certain ways or not. And so that can come up definitely in relationships. And that's why I say like the retrograde back into Pisces can be helpful to integrate the coming together again, which Jupiter in Aries can sometimes create issues around.
So basically, since May 11th, I want to jump on in here. So May 11th is where Jupiter goes into Aries, okay? And it happens at this very interesting time that kind of initiates a lot of things. And we don't really have time to get into every nitty-gritty detail, but Mercury goes retrograde in Gemini May 9th.
Went. This is the past.
This is just a month ago.
Just a month ago.
Just a month ago. And it goes retrograde. Within 2 days later, May 11th, Jupiter comes into Aries. And I believe Saturn goes retrograde by the end of that retrograde at, bear with me, June 3rd. So why do I want to talk about that? Is because basically Jupiter is coming into its sign of Aries with its ruler Mars. This is a kind of an advanced situation. While Mercury is going retrograde at home, and we have all these planets at home. We have Mercury at home in Gemini, Venus at home in Taurus, and Mars at home in Aries, and Jupiter is giving extra juice and getting extra initiative because of those two rulerships. So I'm dropping in a little bit deeper just to say this, is that this is where we're rethinking and recharting who we are from the decisions that happened between in May and June. And you won't see the rewards quite yet. We're still in Mercury's getting out of shadow. So it's like repotting plants. It's like repotting these identity of who we are and what we want and what it is that we need to actually, I want that and I want this. And things are going to be coming forward because when we get up to June 28th, now I'm skipping ahead, July 28th, this is actually when Jupiter has gone to the maximum area of its journey that it's going to get to go on. It's got, the little pitchfork thing on its back, and it's like charted as far as it can, which is 8 degrees Aries, that it's going to go retrograde, Jupiter retrograde in July 28th right after the new moon in Leo. So this is only a little pocket of like 2 months that we're getting this Jupiter in Aries that is going to retrograde. And my little secret for people back home is that when you have a new moon in Leo, the sun in dignity, trining Jupiter, the exalted place of the sun, we are literally looking at an aspect where you might really be standing in the shoes of an identity you've been paving for, if not from the beginning of the year or even initiated just this month. So things can happen more radical and faster than one believes, but it's literally like, okay, I'm going to go do this thing in my life. And then it looking like from the seed to sprouting to just getting a leaf to getting a second leaf seems like a excruciating process. I would argue that is some magical fire energy, especially when Jupiter's now here to now move back and receive what we've understood about this identity. Now, I just want to say this. Because it comes back into Pisces later, I want to get the exact date. It's about November. It's about November 10th, I believe. I just want to get the exact date.
October 28th.
October 28th. Oh, wow. It is slow. It is crazy slow. Yep, she's correct. October 28th. That is basically right where that ego identity that we've been with is actually having to go back into a spiritual plane and get more colors from source. I won't lie, Jupiter retrograde back into Pisces is here to almost come back to an even higher level of consciousness, to maybe something we don't even know, we haven't even understood spiritually, that's supposed to come in with that identity. So I actually think things get even more majestic. So it's like honestly initiating something that you want for yourself and getting that. But actually, when Jupiter comes back into Pisces, there's actually, I can see the great benefic and Pluto retrograde, all these retrogrades. That's not the full picture you need, my child. Like, that is not everything that you think that you wanted. We must go back and plug in or something. Like, it's like there's more meditation needed.
Ricky's going to grow out his beard for this new role.
I want to be 50-year-old Jupiter looking
Albus
beard.
Dumbledore.
I would like to look more like Zeus or Gandalf or something. Anyway, but yeah, that time will definitely be where she's so sweet, isn't she?
I don't think the camera can see the dog.
It's fine. No, they can't. They can see the ear. She's got cute ears.
All right, maybe don't grab the microphone.
But
it's really loud.
But that's just really important, because then when it comes back to apparently my birthday, December 20th, that area, that last days of Sag, that we're going to have Jupiter come back into Aries, this is like very knowing, I would even argue maybe a spiritual mission, a resolved on who you are and really come into contact with source. There's some enormous expansion within what your imagination is bound to understand. So when we're coming into the area, I think 2023 is going to have a lot more Jupiter in Aries and a lot even more pronounced drive than we're even experiencing right now. So that's what I want to share.
I feel like
Gemini season, it's just crazy.
That's my life, 24/7. Yeah, the Jupiter in Aries, I feel like it's kind of like a little kid is like, okay, I want this, I'm gonna go for it. And then when it goes back into Pisces, it's like, okay, this is on a soul level why you want this, how this contributes to your life overall, how this contributes to others' lives. And then when it goes back into Aries, I feel like we are filled with a purpose. We're not just a warrior who's being directed. We now have the objective with the why and this moral or integrity behind what we're doing. And I think that is what makes us ultimately become so successful, And so I think the Jupiter in Aries that's occurring after December 20th and into 2023 is going to be the most fruitful, hopefully, if we are attuning to what is happening on the spiritual plane. I don't necessarily think that's going to be what's happening for everyone, because we're all at different levels of consciousness, but it's available to us if we want access to that.
I will say it's because I do want to add this, and I really agree with everything you said. It's like a message from source, because Jupiter is going to come quite back close to Neptune again to reignite a little bit of that Jupiter-Neptune conjunction. It's not exactly going to happen, but it is getting a little bit close to like tickle a little bit of that. It's like almost getting a more of a spiritual mission reigniting back into Jupiter and Aries, where I also like to speak upon where it's not going to actually happen, but then Jupiter, after it finishes in Aries, is going to come next to that North Node. So there's something really important about the identities that we're creating and what fruits that will bear in the coming years. So think about that a little bit. It's like having fun, obviously, in the moment with Aries, but recognizing, is it something truly valuable, which you said earlier in this video, that it's something that you feel in your value that is to the caliber of how you feel you want to identify with certain things. It's like, sometimes it is about identifying with higher material value. Sometimes it's whatever you're doing that's going to activate that area for your life where those fruits get bared, and you're really being able to, what's the word? Revel enjoy and just embrace that value. So it's even a bigger start. It's start of an even bigger journey.
All right, and let's talk a little bit about what might see the benefit of this. So, as we mentioned before, you want to look at your birth chart. I like to look at whole sign houses when I'm trying to figure out which house is going to receive the biggest benefit of something, but you could also use Placidus if you don't have any intercepted signs. If you don't know anything of what I just said, don't worry about it. Basically, you're just going to look for the sign of Aries and see which house it's in predominantly.
It's a lot of math to get into that.
And once you find that house, this is where you're going to have the potential for some of those really big growth spurts. So, So the other thing I wanted to mention as well is kind of industries associated with this. So Mars ruled topics or Aries ruled topics, which is often associated with things like war or like surgery, things with knives. It's also highly associated with entrepreneurship and business because of the competitiveness factor. Any competitive sports, as I was mentioning, or something physical in nature. Let's see, what else? Blood, which Ricky mentioned. So issues around, like blood could become more predominant, which is actually funny because I've been hearing more and more about blood clotting from, I don't want to get super into this, but I'll say blood clotting becoming an issue.
Malpractices within situations.
So, yeah.
And discovering through that what is really happening into the identity of the body.
So, yeah, definitely paying a lot of attention to things like blood clots or strokes and things of that nature, which we can already kind of see becoming more and more in the news. So those are all things that could expand in some capacity, either becoming more of a focus, either becoming better. So if you are a business owner, like your business growing and having more energy and capacity for that, or people becoming more athletic and trying new sports, all those things can kind of become center stage in our society.
You might really just see not just humans, but like things changing the whole identity pivot of their business, I heard something that Walmart is actually doing something totally different to combat Amazon. I don't quite know all the semantics of it, but basically it's changing the whole identity on how they're even operating business, basically. So like this is all on the playing field of like how we're even re-identifying with life. And so a lot of that can get a little bit muddled and confused because Jupiter is just here to expand it. It's just like, I just think like pumping a tire, it's just like pumping whatever it is. And then once we go through some of that like Saturn retrograde and the Jupiter retrograde, we can actually more solidify some of those actual things that are more pronounced and very authentic. As another thing with Aries is it loves to be with things that are authentic and pure. So if something's just kind of a little muddled thing, it's a quick fling, it's just something that's feeding the energy, you might have a fun time doing it. So I'm not discrediting that. It's also just knowing like, hey, is this something you can really merge within your identity? And then someone might have an awakening of something that is like, actually, I really want to be this person at my core, at my truth, authentic. I've rediscovered something about myself that makes me, this is who I am, and takes a whole different pivot. And that might get initiated within this year or so.
I also wanted to kind of give some advice because as I've mentioned like 6 different times, Aries is a Mars ruled sign, and this has a lot to do with anger and frustration. And so if you notice that you are getting fed up with yourself, with others, with certain things in your life, these are very helpful emotional indicators of a need for change or a need for action if you've been procrastinating. And so if you experience some of these more kind of uncomfortable emotions, this is Jupiter's way of trying to instigate you to get off your butt and do something about the situation. Your boundaries are being crossed, or you are procrastinating too much on something, or you've been tolerating a situation for too long. There's something about that has to give way. And so be really mindful of those specific emotions this year.
I really, really love that you shared that, because that can be a guiding compass for people. What I read once is anger is repressed passion. It's joy that got like compressed. And you can see a candle that if you choke out the air, that candle can't really express itself or emit what the little heartbeat of the candle wants to do. So if you're experiencing anger or frustration, it's not that it needs to be negatively aspected, but use that as a guiding compass. Like, am I giving myself what I need right now? Am I giving myself the expression to express my passion the way I would like to? Because this is a huge fuel. This is a rocket ship of energy, Jupiter in Aries. This is this full-blown masculine drive, a throttle. What are you going to use the throttle on? And if you're constantly angry, it's probably not being used in a constructive way. Because honestly, this could be like the roller coaster of your life if you're being in the place where you're initiating and identifying and it feels in your flow. So I love that you brought that up. Yeah.
All right. And I just wanted to wrap up. And actually, let me just say what I want to say, and then you can say whatever you want to say. Okay. So as I mentioned, Jupiter will be in Aries, or will return to Aries on the 20th of December, and it will wrap up its entirety on May 16th of 2023. So you have until then to really initiate some of these lessons or to begin some of these things in your life. And you can always do it. You can always start new things. You can always, be who you want to be and identify with who you want to identify, but you won't always have the most support that you have right now. So just keep that in mind, that the ground is fertile for this type of experience.
Extremely.
And so you have until summer of next year to get your ish together, which is why I'm probably doing 75 hard. I don't think that's a coincidence, because I've always had trouble with self-discipline in particular. So this is something that I get frustrated with myself about. And so I'm like, I am ready to actually make a change. And hopefully this can be a structured way in which I can do that.
Last thing, and not the least, is Chiron, the wounded healer, is sitting here in Aries. So there's a lot of issues we might not have felt like things look the way we want them to look. Stereotypic Aries is like you want to, I literally joke if someone in a general outfit and their full glory, very glorious ego fanning position could be for Aries. And when Chiron's there, it definitely makes us feel like some things aren't exactly what it is. We got what we get, there's I'm thinking about COVID and just like, I want the premium toilet paper. Yo, you got the sandpaper in the back. It's what you get.
Here's some leaves from outside.
There's some leaves that we've constructed for you. You get what you get right now. And Chiron in Aries like, this isn't what I thought I was going to get, like super exaggerated. So, but hold on right now. There's wounds within that characteristic of us maybe feeling like we don't always get what we get. But when Jupiter comes on this area, we are re-healing our identity and accepting that things are perfect as they are and serve a higher purpose. Jupiter will come over this Chiron, and it is a huge re-identifying healing property. It's almost like tears of like, this is where I belong. This is who I am. And I'm sitting in it, in the shoes of it. And the abundance of Jupiter can give us the faith that we're going to really fall on the trail that was meant for us.
Okay, I know we said we're wrap up, but I do want to say something about that. I'm never leaving. The Chiron and Aries wounding has a lot to do with this. It's almost like an existential wounding that I don't have the right to exist. I don't have the right to be who I am. Mm-hmm. And essentially it's like when you state your needs, when you're autonomous, when you say who you are, when you take what you want, those are all bad. And so Jupiter in Aries, I think, is trying to come heal that when it is with Chiron, and trying to help us understand that we have the right to take up this space. We have the right to be here, and we're supposed to be here. It's not even just the right. Jupiter is our connection with the spiritual realm, with God, or whatever you believe in. And so it's almost like us finally saying, oh, I understand my purpose. I understand why I am the way I am, or how I'm here to make an impact on people and to own my unique gifts and to not, hide my light or to feel like I need to be like someone else. And so I think this can be an extremely healing time, but also somewhat triggering time because we're also having to work through those wounds or those thoughts that could be even subconscious.
Self-doubt or whatever it might be.
Exactly. And God knows I have a lot of that. And this is also part of why I started this challenge. I'm like, if I can do this difficult thing, then I will believe in myself more. And that's exactly what Jupiter in Aries is about. If I can take on this challenge, I will start to believe in my right to exist, in my confidence, in my capabilities, all these things. And so that's essentially what this year is teaching us.
To add one little thing on that, because I agree with you and I respect that, but it's even just like, you never fail by even hitting the ground. You only fail when you give up.
Yeah.
And that's a big thing about Aries. And I got to be honest, as an Aries moon, people I know that have Aries, we hit our head, we scrape our knees, we get hurt all the time. I seem like I always have an active wound at one point in time, even if it's just a scrape on the finger. But like something about that is just like, mistakes happen, but it's just keep going. And it's like, it's an engagement to keep progressing forward. And it's kind of that reminder, of like owning your scars with Chiron there. It's like owning where we've come from. And there's more empowerment, and follow through creates confidence. And so a lot of Capricorn themes and Aries themes are much about igniting who we are to follow through with who we want to be. And so I don't know, I can't speak for everyone, but very personal, those can get you out of anything moments where you remind yourself of who you are and what, like, I'm here to do this and focus and breathe. You can get through anything. And even when it's like some moments suck, it's just kind of another code of honor to yourself of like, hey, even that mountain biking trail or whatever, I'm just using an example, I got through that. I can get through this. And I know what to do. We've been through this problem before. And if it conspires to my personal situations, my relationship challenges, my business challenges in anywhere that life has to offer, this is where the love and the passion shows us who we are made to be. And that will shine upon other people. Confidence is contagious at this time. So
I love that. I think that's a great place to end. And if there's anything else you want to say, you can say it now or forever hold your peace. Okay, awesome. And thank you guys so much for staying tuned. If you want a reading from us, I will have links for our websites and where to book that in the description box down below. Again, I'm Courtney from Willows Bloom and
Ricardo Zebert, Infant Soul.
Make sure you check out his YouTube channel if you're watching on mine, and make sure to check out mine if you're watching on his.
Totally.
And yeah, thank you guys so much for staying tuned. Hope you have a blessed day. Bye.
Take care.